That brings us to the main event. 5 rounds, if necessary, in the UFC welterweight division. A rematch between Kamaru Usman, the defending champion, and Jorge Masvidal. It will be the first main event in a full UFC arena since March of 2020. Usman, the 33-year-old Nigerian American, is 18-1 overall. He is a sterling 13-0 in the UFC. He won the title from Tyron Woodley in March of 2019. Since then, he has defended against Colby Covington, Masvidal in their first meeting, and most recently Gilbert Burns back at UFC 258 in February. By his own request, he is facing Masvidal a second time. The man who goes by Gamebred, 36-year-old fighting out of Miami, Florida, 35-14 in a storied and well-traveled career, 12-7 in the UFC, and has not fought since that loss to Usman last July, but previous to that had been on a 3-fight win streak against Darren Till, Ben Askren, and Nate Diaz for the BMF belt that between the two of them they willed into existence. Perhaps reflecting the outcome of their first fight, Usman is a prohibitive favorite here. He's at minus 420, minus 425 or so. You can get Masvidal as high as plus 340 on the comeback. Jorge Masvidal was Sherdog's 2019 Breakthrough Fighter of the Year. I know because I wrote the feature for it. And it was just shocking and delighting in all the right ways. I assumed that he was just going to be the hardcore fans like insider tip through the end of his career, a guy that would never quite break through to the next level. One of the most well-rounded fighters in the sport, always fun to watch, but sometimes a little too willing to admire his own work in the stand-up and prone to losing iffy decisions at the most inopportune times. So to see him just break through and become beloved by the general public, by the general just MMA watching public, for doing nothing other than the things that had brought him there in the first place. This was not a Chael Sonnen conscious adoption of a new persona plus steroids. It was the same Jorge Masvidal, beating people up, saying a few kind of funny, pithy things on the mic, but generally being kind of uncomfortable with the PR process. It was great. And then in 2020, if there were an opposite of Breakthrough Fighter of the Year, like break back through the floor, that would have been Masvidal. Because the guy that had become beloved for doing spectacular things in the cage and saying cool things was all of a sudden wearing bathrobes all the time, airing out his worldview on Twitter. And for the record, I wouldn't have been a fan of that even if it aligned more closely with mine. I just want to see him fight and give me one-liners. And there was precious little fighting and precious few one-liners in 2020. But he did do enough to get this matchup because it got under Usman's skin that Masvidal stepped up on such short notice and gave him a tough fight that people were criticizing Usman coming out of, just making fun of the 5,000-foot stomps, saying that Usman was like scared to strike with Masvidal. Like it clearly got under Usman's skin because he could have had anybody and he wanted this fight back. In the other two title fights we've talked about, I feel as though the underdog, even if they're rightfully the underdog, has things they can do that will make the champion uncomfortable and can threaten them, even under ideal conditions. I don't feel that way about this fight. For all the weapons that Masvidal has, all the ways he threatens Usman, in my mind, involve Usman making a mistake. And I'm just not going to pick that to happen. Because not only is Usman, I'm not going to get into like greatest of all time or greatest of his time conversations because Josh has already shamed me for like being a noob about that. But you didn't really shame me, but you pointed out the futility of doing it like so close to the primes of people's careers. But he's certainly one of the most dominant champions in the sport right now. Ben.
Plus, we'll do it on the recap anyways.
Yeah, we'll do it on the recap. Like we'll just be full of adrenaline. But he's certainly one of the most dominant champions in the sport right now. And despite that fact, and despite the fact that he's won 13 straight fights, he's still improving from fight to fight. I believe it was Josh that actually asked on Twitter this week whether Usman's jab was the most, like, the best weapon in the sport right now. Was that you, Josh?
That was me, yeah.
Okay. One, I thought it was a great question. Two, I love the way you phrased it, because I've said on our previews and recaps a few times that there are fighters for whom the jab is a tool, like even fighters who are really good at it. And then there are fighters for whom the jab is a weapon. You know, there are fighters whose jab is a range finder, a rhythm disruptor. And then there are fighters whose jab breaks your orbital, splits your skin open, knocks you down. Like the way he sat down Gilbert Burns with a jab to kind of set up the finish in their fight, that is a weapon he didn't have 18 months ago. It's something he has developed in the last 18 months or so under Trevor Whitman. I expect Usman to be a better striker even than he was in their first meeting, 9 months ago. I don't know if he's a better striker in a vacuum than Masvidal. Like, I think Masvidal is one of the best boxers in the sport. But Usman's improving striking, his incredible discipline, and his physical advantages. Masvidal is a former lightweight. Nobody is going to confuse Kamaru Usman for a former lightweight. The dude is titanic. And he has, range and reach and uses them very intelligently. I expect that he might even just get the better of the striking exchanges. Masvidal might touch him, might hurt him. He gave him a few things he didn't like early on in their first fight. But I think Usman is going to, he might do his suffocating clinch thing. He might just bring Masvidal to the ground. But here, full camp Masvidal versus, Usman preparing for Masvidal, I think this favors Usman enormously. I think he will probably bring it to the ground by choice. The question, again, is whether he's able to finish it. Masvidal is an incredibly difficult guy to get out of there. Obviously, in his lengthy career, 35-14, he's been finished exactly once. And I want to say it was a long time ago. But I'm picking, I'm predicting that I'm going to see something that I have not seen in a long time. Give me Kamaru Usman by finish. It's going to be late in the fight after he's just worn on him. It goes to the ground. Say the fourth round, it's one of those choose your poison finishes where Masvidal can stay where he is and get punched out, or turn his back and get choked out. But give me Kamaru Usman by fourth round TKO on the ground. Keith, tell me I'm crazy.
You're crazy, but as far as who's going to win, now I'll start with Masvidal, because last time I broke down Usman, my notes were really long on the guy. Masvidal, going all the way back to when he was, mid-card guy in the UFC, we always talked about his footwork. He's got very good footwork, very technical boxer. He, Josh talked about the jab of Usman. Masvidal also has a very good jab himself. He actually, I think it's a tool too for him. It's a stinging jab himself. Though his counter left hook is probably his best strike. That's the one he put Darren Till out with. One thing I love about Masvidal's striking, and we've talked about this before, is I love that when he switches stances, he switches and instantly explodes on that side. And what I mean by that is he switches from one stance to the opposite. So, for example, he's in the orthodox, he switches to southpaw, and then he attacks because he doesn't give his opponent the chance to switch and think about, okay, every defense I have now is reverse when he switches. He doesn't give his opponent a chance to think of that. That's really good. Obviously, he's got good power. A lot of his power comes because he throws power combos. His straight right, left hook is like his favorite one. He's recently added some leg kicks. But some of the things we talked about earlier is still issues that I have. I think about the Nate Diaz fight where he obviously was smoking him, but there was times where he was cruising. And that's something that he's been accused of doing in the past. I mean, I think about the Lorenz Larkin fight where he thought he was winning the whole time and he was losing, and he kind of like, well, if they throw at me and I move them, that doesn't score you points. And he kind of got in that mode. And that's still something I'm worried about. Now, he can sneak in a takedown. Jorge Masvidal is not a bad wrestler. He can catch a kick to get the fight to the ground. Now, I would be utterly shocked if he can do that against Kamaru Usman. Now, one thing we can expect is that he's probably going to be on his back, because, well, one, we saw that in his last fight. He was taken out 5 times by Kamaru Usman. But he, not against Usman because Usman's so good, but usually Masvidal is very good at getting back up. And he's extremely hard to submit. I mean, think about his fight with Damian Maia. Damian Maia was on his back for long periods of that fight. He couldn't get us down. I looked at his record. He hasn't been submitted in 16 years. That's how long it's been since Jorge Masvidal has been submitted. Now, we move over to the skills of Kamaru Usman. I mean, he's a pressure fighter. He just overwhelms foes with his output. But he can fight from the outside. We saw it with the Burns fight where he hurt him. We saw it in the Colby Covington fight. He's a long, rangy guy. I don't know. I don't want to like call out Josh. I don't know if it's the best tool in MMA. Because I would say it's in the club. Like we talked about when I did it with John Franklin. And what I mean, I'll give you an example. We used to say we didn't argue what was the best. We would say like, do they get in the club? And we mean like, for example, if I said who's the greatest jiu-jitsu practitioners in MMA history, well, if there was a club, Fabricio Verdum gets in the club. David Maia gets in the club. Like these guys don't have to wait in line. I would say that with Usman. Like I don't know if it's the best tool. I mean, Connor's fade back left hand is pretty good. Max Holloway's right hand, Justin Gaethje's leg kicks. I mean, they're all in the club. Like it's in the club. And I'm glad that he pointed that out because Usman used to have a good jab. Like 2 fights ago against Colby Covington, that was a good jab. Now it's an elite jab. And also, one thing he does well is he uses kicks well. He uses teeps up the middle. He uses those lengthened kicks. I love that he follows long strikes into his mid-range. Like he'll throw something straight and he follows that in to get into the pocket, and then he'll follow that in to suddenly be on the guy's hips. He's so good at closing those distance in either he doesn't always close in huge gaps. He closes in small gaps, so you don't really see the takedown coming from that. He used to really wing his punches. But even that, he's cleaned that up a lot. And I think that has a lot to do when you talk about changing camps. He, one time he'd overthrow and then he'd open to counters, and he's really showed that up. I love that he attacks the body. Colby Covington had success by forcing Usman back on his back foot at times. But now that's not even the case. He holds his ground. Like after he got cracked by Gilbert Burns, he started holding his ground, and he did much better at that point. And I even think when he was cracked by Gilbert Burns, I just didn't think he expected Gilbert to come out of the gate like a madman like he did. Like I don't think Usman expected that. And we've seen Usman all the way up to this point. That was the first time we saw him visibly hurt. I think that's more of an outlier than the actual norm going future. He's got insane volume. He goes as hard in the 5th round. I mean, look at the Colby Covington fight where they have a back and forth, incredible fight. And then in the 5th round, he still has enough power to, stop Colby Covington. And that's because he's a builder. He's a guy who has a good output in the 1st round, and he just keeps building. So guys, I think the best fighters in MMA are like that. Max Holloway's a guy that just gets stronger and stronger as round goes on. That's what you got, Usman. He's also just a huge welterweight. He uses his size so well in the wrestling, the grappling department. He's so extremely strong. Perfect example is when he was fighting RDA, and RDA went for Kimura, and Usman's defense was, I'm just going to lift you up in the air and slam you. Like, I'm going to lift the welterweight just up in the air while he's got a Kimura, like Jessica Andrade did to Rose Namajunas, and just got his arm out. His entries are great. He drives right through his opponent's hips. His snatch single is really his go-to. And what I like about him is he's so composed. Like, we talk about if his jab is his best weapon, I think his composure is his best attribute. He doesn't get frustrated. He knows that he doesn't have to get you down in the first entry. He just needs to get space. Say the space is 2 feet. He needs to close that space. Whether he gets 6 inches on the first one, then he gets 18 inches on the next one, or so forth. He's going to get onto those hips, and he's going to get you down, and he's going to wear you out. And he doesn't necessarily even have to get you down. He needs you just to defend, because he knows he's wearing you out that. And then the second and third time he tries, he's going to get you down. He also has just those long arms that he uses well to get behind, scoop up. He caught a kick of Masvidal, so we could see Masvidal in this fight not throwing any kicks. He did take him down. And if he does, like I said, if he doesn't get you down, he just smother you. I said it before, and I think his best position might not even be his top control. It might be his chest to chest, leaning on you. I said, like, if I go to hell, it's just going to be Kamaru Usman press me against the cage, chest to chest, and just give me those little short rib punches over and over and over again. That looks terrible. He did it to Woodley. He did it to RDA. And when he's on top, you're not going to get back up. He's just going to control you. If his opponents work back to his feet, like sometimes working back to your feet against Usman might even be worse because you're starting to get a little hope. But then he still stays on you and finds a way to chip you right back down or throw you right back down. And now you just wasted energy, and that just demoralizes you. And what I love about him is he's always hitting you in every position. If he's got you against the cage, he's got to punch you in the rib, and he's got to hit you with his shoulder. Or, in a way, I might as well say, he's going to stomp on your foot. He's going to knee your knee. Like, it must be so frustrating fighting a guy like that. So as far as who's going to win, what has changed? Like, why should I suddenly think, because now he's got 8 weeks instead of, what was it, week to prepare for the fight? Like, I don't think the skill set is going to change. If we remember, Masvidal used to be a lightweight. He's kind of a little undersized. You have Usman, who's huge. I wouldn't be surprised if Usman stands with him a little bit because of, Usman was scared to stand with Masvidal. But if he stands with him, it wouldn't shock me if Usman wins the stand-up. Like, I would pretty close to 50-50. I mean, Usman he just outstruck Gilbert Burns. He outstruck Colby Covington. Though I think, Masvidal had a little bit of success with the calf kicks in their first fight. But I really think it's what I said the first time. I only see a puncher's chance. I see him landing one big shot. That's the only way I see Masvidal winning. And in the back of my mind, like, yeah, Usman might stand a little bit more, but he still knows his money is the chest to chest, getting it on the hips, get the fight to the ground. I think he's going to do the same thing. And I actually think what we're going to see is an increase in his ground and pound. Like, I think he's going to turn that up. So I think it's going to be one-sided affair. I think it's going to get a decision, but I think it's going to be even more entertaining because I think Usman's going to do even more damage on the ground. Give me Usman, and I think it's going to be a 50-45, maybe even a 50-44 scorecard.
There we go. Two strong picks in favor of Usman to defend. Josh Gross, thank you for joining us, and take us on home.
Happy to be here. Well, a few things. On the discussion of like the best weapon, it was a yes or no question. Like, does Kamaru Usman have the best weapon? Is his jab the best weapon in MMA? And obviously, this is a question that can be left open to interpretation, and it's not very specific. The way that I had in my head when I asked it, I was like, is this jab of Usman the most valuable, important weapon for any singular fighter? And if you remove that, are they the same? And to me, I'm not going to sit here and say, yes, it's the best weapon in MMA, and there's no question about it. But it's right there. I mean, the work he does with his lead hand has just gotten better and better, and it's a damaging, clubbing jab that allows him to do so many things off of it. Oftentimes, the jab is a rangefinder. You can create distance or determine how you want to approach and fight somebody by using the jab and seeing how they react. He uses the jab to shove it in your face, and you're not going to like it. And at a certain point, either takedown's coming behind that or something else is coming behind. But the difference with Usman is his intensity. I've heard a lot of different reasons for why he's great. His intensity and his intelligence are the two things that stand out to me the most. Incredibly cerebral fighter. He not overly cerebral where he gets in his own way, though. He will allow his physical attributes to overwhelm opponents. He will find roads to victory and stay on that road and not get off that road and not give a damn that somebody else is trying to honk behind him to move along. It doesn't matter. He will force his way to it. A lot of ways I see Usman as a combination of Matt Hughes and a GSP. Got that wrestling where you can go and tie up with somebody, and got that brute strength of the Hughes where you can go and tie up somebody. Got the jab and the effectiveness of a GSP jab. Obviously, that GSP jab is one of the greatest of all time. No question about it. I have no problem saying that. So I'm not saying that the Usman jab is anywhere near technically on par with the GSP jab, but the effectiveness and what it does to opponents, absolutely, it's as important for Usman and as effective for Usman as that GSP jab was in his heyday. So all of this is a long-winded way of saying that I don't think Jorge Masvidal has much of a shot in this fight. I would say that he is, of course, a one-hitter quitter kind of guy, and you have to worry about something unorthodox out of the blue. But to me, that's not going to happen to Kamaru Usman. He's too aware. He's too intelligent. He's too physically prepared. Even if he takes some damaging shots, he's physically prepared to take those shots. He can hold up after taking some punishment if he needs to. And the problem is that you never get a moment's rest against him. Never. And so that's not a good recipe for Masvidal, because Masvidal is an in and out fighter. He's a I'll pressure you, I'll do something, but I have to back away because I don't have the gas tank to sustain this over the course of a 15 or 25-minute fight. Certainly not 25 minutes against a hard, strong wrestler, grappler who can stick damaging shots into your face if he needs to and go to the body. So I think Usman finds that the road to victory is the easiest one, the simplest one in front of him, the one that we all kind of see and expect him to do. Yes, he can stand in front of Masvidal. No, I don't think he's going to be tempted to try and outstrike Masvidal to prove a point. I do think he'll move with him. I do think he'll throw hands with him. But everything to dictate what he wants to do, which is to tie up, control, take down, ground and pound, that is just the most sensible way to win this fight. And I don't know what George does to stop him. He can make it more difficult. He can make takedowns difficult. He can make dominant scoring position on top for Usman difficult. But at a certain point, I just don't see how he's going to accommodate, handle, and then alleviate that pressure. I just don't know how Masvidal figures that out in a way that makes Usman's pressure and intensity a detriment in the fight. I don't see it working out that way. I do think that a late round stoppage or decision are the two likeliest outcomes. Anything within the first 3.5, 4 rounds, 3 or 3.5 rounds would surprise me. So I like Usman to win. I think he can do it in a variety of ways, but he'll choose the one that makes the most sense. And if something's not going that way, he can improvise. He can do more. But at the end of the day, I do feel the thing that drives him, that intensity, that refusing to accept that this man in front of you is going to do anything to trouble you. He's kind of got that Marvin Hagler thing going on. He kind of does. And I'm not, again, it's like you get in trouble sort of comparing these names, but like his intensity, and you're standing across that guy, and that guy's not going to give you a damn inch, never. And he can beat you a bunch of different ways, and he's in incredible shape. It's just that's a terrible recipe against almost any fighter in the world. And for George Masvidal, I think it's really almost an impossible feat. If he can figure out a way, and it's not even figuring out a way, if he can find something miraculously in this fight to turn the tables, to make Usman hurt, make a mistake, I'd be stunned. Masvidal stunned us before, but I don't see it. I think it's Usman's fight to win. I think he wins it and advances from here, having made a point, having said, well, George, you got your full camp. It didn't work out for you. I'm going to move on now. And basically, I think that's what we'll be getting post-fight.
There you have it. 3 strong picks for Kamaru Usman in the main event of UFC 261. That completes the Sherdog Radio Roundtable for UFC 261, Usman versus Masvidal 2. Make sure to check in either through the Sherdog front page or directly on the Sherdog YouTube page immediately after the main event, as Keith and I will be doing our live recap. We'll take your questions, take your comments, take your abuse through the live chat. Until then, for Josh Gross and Keith Shillan, I'm Ben Duffy, Sherdog Senior Editor. Thank you for listening and enjoy the fights.